Good morning.
Hi there, I'm Angela Spinazzè,
I'm Holly Witchey.
and we're here to wish MCN a happy birthday.
Happy birthday, MCN.
Happy birthday!
We're going to interview each other because that's the role of MCN at 50. That
That's
was
right.
what we were asked to do. Did we pick a question? What question are we going to do, Angela?
We did. We picked a question, and we're going to start off by sharing our journey, our professional journey, in 10 words.
Because we both like words.
Because we both like words. We're readers. We're writers.
We look things up in dictionaries.
We love dictionaries. Okay, so are you ready? Will you start, Holly?
I will start if you will start too.
Okay,
Should
let's
we
go together.
Let's go together? Okay.
Excellent.
My first word is San Diego, where I started my career.
Cool. And mine's Chicago. That's where I started my career.
Oh. My next word is curator. That's how I started out.
My word is facilitator. That's what I do now.
But I think I'm curious. That's another.
Oh, I'm definitely curious.
Oh, we got a match. We
Yep.
got gin rummy or something. There we go.
There you go.
I'm a translator.
And I'm what I like to call a bridge builder, even though I'm not an engineer. Sometimes I feel like I'm building bridges.
Huh, those are, let's
kinda go together.
Let's kind of put those together. I'm what is sometimes called a generalist.
And I am called sometimes a technologist, even though I don't know what that means.
Oh.
So
well,
let's put those together
okay,
since they're
technologist
generic.
and
Yeah.
generalist. I am a teacher.
Oh, and my work is human-centered, so
Teacher,
that's
human-centered?
kind of goes together.
Let's put those together. I am passionate about what I do.
Me too. And I'm also compassionate, which I think you are as well.
That's right. So
And those
let's
kinda
put
match.
Those kind of match. Yeah, they got the same word in them. I think we are both generous
We are.
with our
And
time,
Yes,
resources,
exactly, and our trust.
and our trust. Sometimes I am disruptive.
Really? Okay.
am.
Well, I am definitely all the time a risk taker.
Perhaps
So-
that's why we get along so well.
Probably.
And I think that at this point in our careers, we can both be called
Leaders. For sure.
There you go.
All right, so let's break this down a little bit.
Okay.
Tell me, San Diego, tell me your story.
So, I have a PhD in 15th century Italian fresco painting. And after I got married, we moved to San Diego, where I got my first job at the San Diego Museum of Art. And I'd been a curator for about a year when in 1991, a wealthy donor came to the director of the San Diego Museum of Art. The donor had seen the microgallery installation at London's National Gallery. And microgallery was the first computer collections installation anywhere in the world, I think, for a museum. And he said he'd like to do something like that for San Diego, and I was tapped as the project leader for that project to deal with the technologists, then deal with the other curators in the education department and the design and installation department. And in 1994, we installed the Image Gallery, which became the first of its kind in the United States, followed soon after by Vicki Porter's wonderful microgallery installation at the National Gallery in Washington.
Cool.
That's my San Diego story.
Well, very good. So my Chicago story is kind of similar because I have a master's degree in contemporary and modern art history from the School of the Art Institute, and I was working at the Art Institute of Chicago at the time when there was a call to do a physical inventory of the collections comprehensively. Had not been done before like that at any point in time previously. And a colleague of mine said, why don't we build a database and use that as the basis for the inventory? But nobody knew what that really meant, since we had 150,000 3x5 cards that described the collection
Some of those
in the
people out there
registrar's
don't
office.
remember 3x5
Yes,
cards.
right. No, they don't. But we had them, and they were this big. So what we did, so I actually volunteered to be on the team because I thought it would be cool and way more interesting than what I was doing at the time, which was working in the development office. So we microfilmed all of the cards. We sent them overseas to be keyed by people who don't speak English. And so I created the data maps of all the cards so that the people who were doing the data entry could figure out what they were looking at. What was the title? What was the artist's name? What were the dates? What were the materials of composition? Then we built a database out of that, our little team. And then I got sent out to the curatorial departments to talk about how we were going to do this tag team approach to take the inventory, which was kind of fun. But my favorite memory of it is that we built the first mobile computer.
No.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
Tell me about it.
We convinced the curators that we ought to be able to hardwire all of the storage facilities with Ethernet cable. So we did, and then we put a computer on a cart and we wheeled it in and plugged it in. So
Hence the mobile computer.
we were mobile. Anyway, so that's my Chicago story.
Well, I think, what did we have what was our first Generous, I think was the first one that we were both together in.
And
There's Generous
curious.
over there.
Generous. Okay, let's do
And
generous.
Curious, yeah. And we said trust, time, and resources.
We sure did.
Because in the early 1990s, when we started working together, when I started my career, there weren't very many people you could call up and talk to about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Now, we all worked with fantastic people, and you know, the people we were working with on the Image Gallery, Alex Morrison, Ben Rubenstein, Rory Matthews, Jason Ryan, who's now the co-founder of Brilliant Noise, the global marketing firm, and of course MCN's own Nick Honeysett, were all some of the people who were so generous with their time and assistance in helping someone who didn't really understand the technology at the time communicate it to other people.
Yeah, exactly.
And there was a place that we went to. There was a conference.
There was a conference. Well, there were many conferences, but I do believe that it's hard to remember the first MCN conference I went to, but I do remember actually co-directing a conference with Robin Dowden in Cincinnati in 2001. So, and I believe that was maybe your first MCN?
I think that was my very first MCN. I had come down from Cleveland, and it was one of those where Norbert Cantor and I taught a workshop on streaming video, because streaming video was what all museums were going to be doing in the future, and I don't know if any of them. And it was one of those where the participants got in the room, and everybody had come to learn about streaming video, but nobody had a project.
Yeah, of course.
But
they wanted to learn the new tech.
Right.
And then go back and say, how can we apply this?
Right.
Yeah.
So
that was also interesting, because at that conference, which happened to be the year of 9/11, and we actually thought no one was going to show up. But almost everybody did. We only, I think, had one speaker who couldn't make it in due to all the craziness that was going on in those days. It was very heavy atmosphere, but Cincinnati proved to be a really fabulous conference for a lot of people. And it was, we had an emphasis that year on these new technologies. And so I was really happy, because I got to organize a whole big, huge plenary session on wearable technologies. And so nobody was even thinking about it really in the museum world. We weren't even really doing mobile at that point.
Right,
but we had a terrific group of people from Carnegie Mellon who were doing all sorts of interesting things. And also the woman, Flavia Spinazzè, who actually did the precursor to Google Glass, was there and was part of the conference and part of the experience.
And I think one of the things that makes those MCN conferences so great is, again, the people that you talk to, the people that you meet, not necessarily what you're learning in the session, but what you're learning over the lunch table, what you're learning at night when you're having these conversations about, here are the problems I'm facing, here are the opportunities I have, and the serendipity that occurs, the sort of, again, the generosity of mentoring and time that occurs at those MCN conferences was really important to me.
Yeah, it was, I think, for all of us. And I think, it's how we became, it's how we met. It's how we've become peer mentors over the years, because we have now a working relationship. We've become friends, beyond that. But it is nice to be able to have someone who you trust, who you know, who you've seen, you've heard them think out loud and try to problem solve and actually seek advice. And that's really pretty important, that peer-to-peer mentoring. The thing that I wish we would have had actually back then, which we really didn't have, which I think you and I both actively do today, is mentors. So we mentor, younger professionals coming into the field, people who are new, trying to learn, even coming in from other fields and other domains. But back then, we didn't really have an active mentor. There was no active mentor network in that regard. So
we have a challenge. We
do.
A birthday challenge for MCN.
We do. And our birthday challenge to MCN is, please, MCN, to be relevant in the next 50 years, embrace peer-to-peer and intergenerational mentoring. These are two ways in which colleagues can help each other, but also colleagues with different experiences across different generations can actually pass on the knowledge from their generation to generations to come. Okay, so what else do we have here? We've got
Translator and Bridge Builder. Do you want to start?
Sure, I'll start. Okay, so these two words go together, at least for me in my mind.
Me too.
Around the work that I've done with open source software and facilitating community design workshops. I spent a lot of, at this point, over a decade, working with lots of different kinds of communities around collections management software, around conservation software, software for museum conservators, with archaeologists, with researchers, scholars, with archivists. And one of the keys to, or one of the things I actually like the most about being a facilitator is that bridge building component that comes in, right? So you're sitting in the middle, comfortable in the middle, subject matter experts on one side, software engineers on another side, everybody wanting to collaborate, but not necessarily always knowing how. And that vocabulary, being able to translate that vocabulary of this is how we work, this is what we need, into here's a functional requirement for you. So it's not anything that I knew I was going to be doing, but it's a really great, it's been really good part of, I think an important part of my career is to sit there and to be able to enable others to have a conversation. I think it's really, really important.
That, and it is, that's one thing that a lot of women of our age from our generation have in common. We started out in these projects, and because we could talk with different groups of people, that's how we made it. In 2001, I moved from San Diego to the Cleveland Museum of Art. Lynn Steinbeck called one day and said, I want you to start the new media department at the Cleveland Museum of Art, and came back to Cleveland. The Cleveland Museum of Art, which at the time was fairly conservative institution. And so my job was to encourage, to cajole curators that technology was going to enhance their collections. It wasn't there to destroy their collections.
Right.
It was going to make people stop coming if we built a website and put the collections online. So it really was, for me, a translation. I think of myself as a translator. I was going from room to room, and I sometimes think of it as an uphill battle. And finding the friendly faces who said, yes, I would like to try that.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
type of project.
Well, and I think there's definitely, you're hitting on something there in terms of the cycle of, or that ability to take the fear out of the technology, right? And to remove that emotional factor in it's the unknown, we don't know, we're not sure, and replace that with, here are the knowns, here's what we do, what we want to accomplish, and here are the assets that we have that are going to help us get there. And I think that sometimes, it's a matter of being able to listen really well, actively, and then repeat back in a way.
Absolutely.
That maybe, those who are doing the talking hadn't necessarily considered. And that comes from having the experience of working in lots of different environments with the technology to say, well, I've seen this, or I've seen that, or here's an example that we might follow. So I think it's... No,
well, I was going to say, and the remarkable thing is about easing tensions and easing fears, because it's remarkable how still in 2017, you still hear the same fears coming up. If we put things online, will the visitors still come? If we have technology in museums, is technology in museums the right thing to do? Right. And it's ironic that in 2009, the new media department at the Cleveland Museum of Art was eliminated, and I went back into teaching because the then director thought that technology had no place in museums. And it's remarkable today. We're in the Cleveland Museum of Art, and the fantastic team that Jane Alexander put together to build Gallery 1. The Cleveland Museum of Art was listed in a recent article as the most technology-friendly museum in the United States.
Yeah.
So
that's incredible.
Fight fear.
It really is. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's talk about this, because this is also sort of goes along with it. Oh, whoops, is that right? No, technologist?
Technologist, generalist.
Wrong ones.
That's okay, we're here somewhere.
Yeah.
Generalist. Nope, that's generalist.
I think they're over there.
Okay.
Yep, right here.
Generalist.
We have too many cards on the table.
Yeah.
Well, what are you going to do?
That is so true. Too many balls in the air and too many cards on the table.
Exactly. So we put these, I can say, because we did talk about these words ahead of time.
Yeah, you probably knew that.
Letting
You
everybody know.
probably knew that,
Yeah, exactly. That we put these words in here because we don't like them very much.
Yeah.
And
we find them used against us sometimes.
Yes.
You're a generalist.
Yeah, exactly.
You're a technologist.
Yeah, exactly. So technologist as opposed to software engineer, generalist as opposed to subject matter expert. But of course, you have a PhD in a subject, and you are a subject matter expert.
That's right.
So part of why these are here, right, is because it's way more than tech. We've just been talking about the ability to sit in between two groups of people who are experts in their respective fields.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that you don't need the person who is able to sit in between and actually help steer the conversation or facilitate the conversation.
So the soft skills.
Exactly. Yes, and why are they called soft skills?
Soft skills.
Will someone please answer that question for us,
Why
because
are
we
they
really
called
don't know.
soft skills as
Yeah.
opposed to hard skills?
Right, so I
Seems
think,
very
you know,
gender biased, doesn't it? in a
well,
way?
it does in a way, yeah,
not get into that.
exactly. But this is all about, right, it's about technology, but it's really not, right?
Right.
Like, we don't think of ourselves as tech people first, we think of ourselves as
Right.
a facilitator, a curator, all these other words that we've just used.
Yeah, technologist is sometimes what we do, generalist is sometimes what we do, but it's not what we are.
No.
No.
No, and tech, you know, is an outlet for our creativity,
Right.
right? I mean, tech is a way of expressing creativity. Tech is a way of sharing, you know, what's in our brains, or what's the result of a collective conversation.
Right, and the excitement about what can be done with the technologies and what there is in the content. You know, I think that when a project really sings is when you get someone who's a content expert so excited about the potential of making a difference with the stories that they're trying to tell, or the information they're trying to convey,
Yeah, absolutely.
using a technology that they might not have thought of.
You'll find this amusing, right? I was telling you this just the other day. So I'm looking at one of these trends reports.
Oh, yeah.
That came out, you know, at the end of the year, and this word "gister" is in there.
Gister?
And, so apparently, in 2017 parlance, we are gisters.
That's with a G, that's not jesters. No,
It's not jesters, it's gisters with a G. So if we are gisters, I think one thing we want to let everybody know that how we would define what a gister is. You wanna sort of take a stab at that? We do have a
We
few
do have a
little
little
notes here.
notes here, yeah. Gisters synthesize complex information.
Yep.
To be able to share across disciplines and domains, with the goal to ensure that every single person in the room is included and can speak from a position of parity. That's the kind of definition we came
Right.
up with.
Well, so from soft skills to generalist to technologist to gister, whatever the label is, the fact of the matter is that it's important to have someone
Gisters.
with the
Yeah.
skills that we do involved in this work, because the technology doesn't do it on its own.
Right, and there's a lot of gisters out there.
Yeah.
That are labeled
That's right.
generalists.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
technologists.
Yeah.
Or consultants, or
Right,
any
with
other
some of these
name.
generic terms.
Right, right.
Exactly. All right, so we're going to end on one that, of course, we really love.
Yeah.
Because as you can tell, we're very enthusiastic people.
We're passionate.
And compassionate.
That's right.
So, talk about your passion for your students, because I know you are an excellent educator.
Yeah, so when I left the world of technology, I went back across the street. I walked across the street to Case Western Reserve University, where my PhD is from, and started teaching museum studies to art history MA candidates there. And sort of at about the same time, the marvelous Phyllis Hecht was starting the Johns Hopkins program. And so there's a group of students there too. And I love graduate students, because they're at that point in their career where they're not just regurgitating information anymore. They're coming up with wonderful ideas. They're passionate. They're idealistic. They believe. Part of my job is to encourage that. Another part of my job is to instill them with a sort of sense of checks and balances, because I believe that passion without empathy, without compassion,
Right.
is a selfish choice.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that
And we're not in it
museums-
for ourselves.
We aren't in it for ourselves, and museums, our community at this point, cannot afford
Yeah.
to have a preponderance of people who are just in it for themselves.
Well, exactly. So, and as we both know, having now spent a few years in this domain, that I use the word compassionate because we are in a field with singular individuals and outsized personalities, and what I've found, though, is, through my facilitation work, that, the dominant voice in the room frequently becomes an echo chamber, And, you know, if you really want to have a successful project, you can't just have one person leading the dialogue, you know, deciding, you know, making all of the decisions and, you know, running away with the show, basically. So I would say, you know, sort of
Down
the three.
with tyrants.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, again, I think oversized personalities tend to dominate, but really in the end, one of the things that I really seek in the work that I do is real collaboration, true inclusivity, and compassion, because that, you know, what we were talking about earlier, parity. I mean, you know, every voice matters, everyone has something to contribute. The magic comes in pulling that all together and, you know, mixing it up into a formula that produces, you know, the best possible version of the thing that you're trying to create. So I think, you know, even when it comes to organizations, I do a lot of organizational development work now, change management work. I always say that, you know, every technology project is a potential for change in your organization because you get to have conversations. So if you're working on a technology project but you're not actually, you're not encouraging and nurturing dialogue, then, you know, you just end up with a technology project that's, you know, about the tech. And, you know, that's kind of boring in a museum.
Right, and, you know, I'd also like to float this idea of intergenerosity, that, you know, we're a field, museums are a field, technology is a field where there are a lot of senior people now and a lot of young people coming up.
Yep.
And one of the things that curatorial departments do very well that, that museum technologists have not done quite so well is document projects.
Yes.
A curator, even if he doesn't or she doesn't like what a predecessor has done, always keeps a record, always knows what that prior content was. And we've lost almost 2 decades of projects because we come into museums and reinvent.
Yeah. Right, so our
reinvent
collective
the wheel.
memory, right, so we're not actually benefiting from our collective memory.
Right.
Because we have very little access to it and very few opportunities to actually engage with those who came before us, who worked on the projects before us, and those who are, you know, trying to work on the ones, you know, the new thing that we couldn't imagine at the time because the technology wouldn't allow it.
Right.
Right? So you're always constrained by the technology that you have available, but you maybe not ought to be constrained by the limited number of projects you think are possible.
Right.
Because of not having access
Absolutely.
to, you know, the history of the projects.
And so intergenerosity, you know, perhaps if you're an older professional, take time to sit down with those young professionals and what are they thinking about and how is their worldview different? And emerging professionals, don't lose an opportunity to talk to us old folk.
Exactly.
We may know a couple of things.
Well, and I would like to call us the more experienced
Experience,
folks,
okay.
because, you know, we're
You don't want
definitely not
folks?
old.
Okay.
But we do have a second challenge.
A second challenge.
For MCN in that regard. We did talk about mentoring before and peer-to-peer and intergenerational, but challenge number 2 is?
We want MCN to equally promote the hard skills and the soft skills.
Right, because we know that technology alone doesn't make a project successful. You can't have technology without people, and you can't have museums without technology.
Yeah, that's what we think.
So, all right.
MCN,
Happy birthday! Thanks for giving us this opportunity to share our journeys.
and we look forward to working with you. We don't just provide challenges and not say we're going to help out, so.
We hope you like a little bit of our vision for the next 50 years. We've given you 2 challenges, and yeah, we want to be there to do it with you.
We want to be there to help.
Bye.
Bye.